I'd like to submit to the record a National Hispanic Media Coalition letter against Spanish language disinformation on social media. And if we could submit that for the record, I'd appreciate that. And also, my first question is to you, Mr. Zuckerberg. In 2020, Facebook brought in approximately $86 billion of revenue in 2020. Is that about right, give or take?
Congressman, I think that's about right.
Okay, thank you. Good. How much of that revenue did Facebook invest in identifying misinformation, disinformation in that portion of your business?
Congressman, I don't know the exact answer, but we invest billions of dollars in our integrity programs, including having more than 1,000 engineers working on this and 35,000 people doing content review across the company.
Okay, and how many people do you have full-time equivalents in your company overall?
Congressman, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's around 60,000.
Okay, so you're saying over half of the people in your company are doing the portion of content review, et cetera, which is the main subject we seem to be talking about today?
No, Congressman, because you asked about full-time employees, and some of the content reviewers are contractors.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there seems to be a disparity between the different languages that are used on your platform in America. And as, for example, there was a study published in April by Avaz, and over 100 items of misinformation on Facebook in 6 different languages was found that 70% of the Spanish language content analyzed had not been labeled by Facebook, as compared to 30% of the English language misinformation that had not been labeled. So there seems to be a disparity there. What kind of investment is Facebook making on the different languages to make sure that we have more of an accuracy of flagging the disinformation and misinformation?
Congressman, thanks. We have an international fact-checking program where we work with fact-checkers in more than 80 countries and in a bunch of different languages. In the U.S. specifically, we have Spanish-speaking fact-checkers as well as English-speaking fact-checkers. So that's on the misinformation side. But also, when we create resources with authoritative information, whether it's around COVID information or election information, we translate those hubs so that way they can be available in both English and Spanish, and we make it so that people can see the content in whatever language they prefer.
Thank you. So basically you're saying it's extensive.
Congressman, this is certainly something that we invest a lot in, and it will be something that we continue to invest more in.
Okay, I like the last portion. I do believe and would love to see you invest more. My 70-plus-year-old mother-in-law, who is primarily a Spanish speaker, commented to me the other day that her friends who communicate mainly in Spanish, and they do use the internet, they do use some of your platforms, gentlemen, that they were worried about the vaccine and that somebody's going to put a chip in their arm. For God's sakes, I mean, that to me just was unbelievable that they would comment on that. But they got most of that information on the internet, on various platforms. Clearly, Spanish language disinformation is an issue, and I'd like to make sure that we see all of your platforms address these issues, not only in English, but in all languages. I think it's important for us to understand that a lot of hate is being spewed on the internet, and a lot of it is coming through many of your platforms. For example, there are 23 people dead in El Paso because somebody filled this person's head with a lot of hateful nonsense, and he drove to specifically kill Mexicans along the Texas-Mexican border. 8 people are dead in Atlanta because an anti-Asian hatred and misinformation has been permitted to spread and allowed on these platforms unchecked, pretty much unchecked. The spread of hatred and incitement of violence on platforms is a deadly problem in America, and we need to see that it stops. Mr. Zuckerberg, do you believe that you've done enough to combat these kinds of issues?
Congressman, I believe that our systems and that we've done more than basically any other company, but I think that there's still a problem and there's still more that needs to be done.
Okay, it's good. You'd like to do more. Thank you. I only have 15 seconds, so I'm going to ask this question to all 3 of you. Do you think that each one of your organizations should have an executive-level individual in charge of this department, reporting directly to the CEO? Do you agree that should be the case? Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, we have an executive level person who's in charge of the integrity team that I talked about, and he's on my management team.
Reports directly to you.
Congressman, he does not. I only have a few direct reports. Okay. A lot of people on the management team report to them.